Hello and welcome. It's Wednesday night, 7 p.m. Eastern time, and that means the Storage Syndicate Spotlight is live. Whether you're joining us on Facebook, LinkedIn, hope you found a way to us. Whether you're watching this live now or you're watching a recording of it, very, very thankful for you guys and grateful for you joining us. As always, my sidekick Murph is in the house, back with a hat this week. His hair is not looking quite as pretty as last week. And we are joined by another hat-wearing companion for the second time joining the show. Actually, very excited to have Joe Evangelisti back. Joe obviously is our partner. Obviously, my title says CEO of Shovel Ready Storage, but we are an arm of Legacy Developers, work with Joe daily, and really wanted to take some time this week, guys, with everything that's going on in the general economy. There has been a lot of turmoil anytime you turn on the news, which I hope for your sake you don't turn on. But if you do, if you read the news, if you're trying to get information, there is a lot of negative press out there. And even when we get good news, a lot of times it's suppressed, right? The jobs report came out last week, and quite frankly, it was better than anyone thought it was going to be. And we heard about it for like a day, and then it went away, and we got right back to China's invading us, and wildfires are ruining us, and all the negative shit that they blast into our face every day. We wanted to come on and really talk about the specifics of what's happening today in self-storage, in particular, as it relates to the overall economy and what you need to know about what's happening as a metric for, especially for people that are invested in different asset classes. You know, what's going on in self-storage? What are the returns? What's the reality of what's happened over the last year, and how has it affected us today? So really excited to have Joe join us. For those of you who don't know Legacy Story, currently have 9 different self-storage facilities in some phase of development. 2 of those stores are already open and leasing up very quickly. Actually saw a social media post from you today, Joe, that GSS is actually well ahead of projections and has been since the minute the doors open, which is always nice to see. So really going to just ask you the first question, Joe, which is, you know, you made this transition to self-storage 3-4 years ago. Hasn't been the easiest last year when it comes to interest rates and what's going on with prices going up. But tell me how you're feeling being in this asset class, you know, June 7th, 2023.
Yeah, I mean, listen, I don't think there's a better asset class to be in, period. I mean, I think that there's a lot of upheaval in the world right now. There's a lot of change in interest rates. There's a lot of things going on, but there's no better place to be in commercial real estate than I can think of than self-storage. You know, there's a lot of movement. There's a lot of fear in the world right now. There's a lot of people questioning, like, where should I put my money, and, you know, what should I be into next? And, you know, concern over saturation rates and, you know, all these things. But, you know, at the end of the day, you know, we're on calls. Everyone on this call is on calls all day long, talking to people in the industry, outside of the industry, lenders, bankers, equity partners, debt partners. And I think the overwhelming sentiment out there is that, you know, we're lucky. You know, we're lucky to be in the industry we're in. You know, I know we're biased to say that, but the reality is that there's a lot of other asset classes that are suffering big time. You know, we could have went into commercial office development. You know, multifamily is still, I think, a pretty solid asset class. I think, especially entry level, you know, B and C class workforce housing is always going to be a necessity. But I think that there's a lot of commercial asset classes that I prefer to not be in right now. And that's not to bash them, but I think it's really, really hard to be in some of those classes. Self-storage is one of those that continues to thrive, continues to be successful. The rates continue to go up. Demand continues to be there. A lot of people are kind of falling to the wayside and slowing down on their development, and we're really doubling down on our development and expanding over the next 2 years. I think it's the time. You know, the blood is in the street. People are getting fearful, and, you know, when people are fearful, that's when I'm going to get greedy.
What are the things that make you feel like now is the time to press the gas pedal instead of maybe feathering the brake a little bit?
I mean, you know, just the reasons I mentioned. I think a lot of people are, you know, timid, and, you know, and you know, the thing about it, the thing is that like when adversity tends to happen, it forces us to do the things that we should have been doing all along, right? And so, people are going to get a little bit skinnier. People are going to get a lot more efficient. They're going to get a lot more effective. They're going to cut the fat. They're going to start to streamline things. And the fact is that legacy has been built that way since day one, right? Like when I was on a call yesterday or the day before with a guy that was a mutual friend of ours. It was a 260-man operation that cut down to 120 people. Legacy is 9 people. Right, like we are so freaking effective and so efficient. It's disgusting. Like, I mean, we can be 9 people in the middle of the dead heat of a recession and still do what we do. I love that about us. We're dogged about going out there and finding great deals with a very tight team, and really working directly with some of the best consultants, some of the best third parties, some of the best design teams and general contractors in the industry. And we're able to manage all that with a very, very effective team with a very, very little overhead. And you guys know what our overhead is. I mean, I share with you what it costs to run this business. It's not a very big, overhead and nut to maintain in an industry where we're out there building hundreds of millions in real estate. It's in the big scheme of things, as my father-in-law loves to say, or the grand scheme of things, we're very effective. We're very efficient. And I think that to be that efficient and to go out and build what we build is a very good combination for a down market. And it's a very good place for folks that are in that private equity sector, and folks that are trying to figure out, what am I going to do with my money? In the next 2 years, this is going to be a great place for that to happen. I was also saying today, a lot of people are talking about the stock market, right? It's taken a little bit of a haircut in the last few months. I think it's going to take a bath in the next 6 to 9 months. And when shit changes hard like that, you're going to start to see people scrambling and saying, where do I place my money? I have no other alternatives. I'm terrified of the banks. The stock market took a shit. I don't know what the other resources are. And they're going to be begging to find people like us to place money into hard assets like real estate that's stable, that's going to continue to grow and be, that's that word stable, right? It's not like this crazy roller coaster that a lot of things are going to be riding for the next couple of years.
Yeah, I think Steve and I'll never forget. We interviewed Alex Burnham, a principal family member of Storage Mart, which is the largest family-owned self-storage company in the world, about $8 billion in assets. And the thing he said that will stick was 25 years, highest performing asset class, lowest standard deviation. And I'll never forget that, right? Like, it's not just that it performs highly, it's that you don't have those friggin' negative swings that crush you, right? Because if you lose 20% of your value in a year, you got to make up 40% just to get back to, getting close to even and above. So that ability not to have those losses. You said something I wanted to dig into, though, which is that very small team, but I think right now we're in 12 different projects. If you count our JV projects, a couple $100 million if you go by pro forma of valuations at a 6 cap, if you did it that way, which is very not aggressive at all. It's a pretty conservative number to value at. How do you keep a 9-person team but be involved in $200 million worth of assets? What's the secret to being able to do that?
Design, process design, really really hypercritical management processes, and a lot of it is, as you guys know, it's Barry and his ability to orchestrate really, really tight meetings and coordinate and communications. Getting our owners, architects, and contractors in alignment once a week on a half-an-hour call to run a $25 million job site and to make changes like that are instantly created and fixed, and change orders happen and pricing gets done on the spot. And we know within 48 hours what it's going to cost, and the stuff is ordered and it's fixed and it's changed. That and really, really, really good expectations set up front. I think that a lot of folks don't realize there's a method to our madness. We talk to a lot of people. They're like, I want to get into self-storage. I think I'm going to do a Class B or a Class C for $40,000. I'm going to start with that, or 40,000 square foot. I'm going to start with that, and I'm going to do a boat and RV, and I'm going to do some outdoor storage over here. We do one thing. We build Class A self-storage. It's a mix of climate control and non-climate control. Maybe there's some boat and RV, maybe, but we really don't vary from what we do. And what that creates is a consistent, predictable outcome, because our team does the same shit over and over and over again. Our designs look exactly alike. The thing that's built in San Antonio, Texas, looks almost exactly like the thing that's built in Allegheny, New York. Looks exactly like the thing that's built in Sicklerville, New Jersey. Looks exactly like the Ohio Mills project. They're almost identical. If you put them all next to each other, you wouldn't know that you were spanning half the United States. And so that design translates. The designers translate. Hell, half the contractors translated across all 4 projects. So it allows there to be less discrepancy there for mistakes, for error, for challenges, for work order changes, for problems to occur. And therefore, there's less error, there's less cost, there's less problems, there's less mistakes. And, now we can create, it's just like, Coca-Cola. We're just pumping through, an assembly line of building the same thing over and over again. There's a lot to be said when you focus on doing the same thing over until it's boring.
I love that. It reminds me of a Bruce Lee quote, which is, I'm not afraid of the man who's practiced 10,000 different kicks. I'm afraid of the man who's practiced one kick 10,000 times, right? It's that inch wide, mile deep. But you introduced me to the book, Ready, Fire, Aim. I think that's where that came out of, right? Know your niche and then dig down, right? Don't dig wide trying to find gold, dig down.
And, I've been introduced to different concepts 10 days a week. I was on a call today with a very, very wealthy investor, and he's like, I got this concept and I really want to shake things up in self-storage. I'm like, respectfully, that's awesome. You want to do that. Like, maybe we can find a way to JV, and maybe my development teams can help you and we take a piece of equity or something, but it's not my plan. Like, it's not what we do. It's not like, I'm not changing my business for you to do that. We can help you in some way, maybe, but that's not our model. My model is to do what I've done 10, 11, 12 times. And I'm going to do it 92 more times until I hit 100. That's what I'm doing. Like, I'm doing it until we hit 100. When I hit 100, who the hell knows? Maybe I'll build airplane hangars. Maybe I'll build hotels. I don't know. But from now until 100, I'm going to do this until I'm bored, blue in the face.
Love it. Let's talk a little bit metrics. I promised our audience that we were going to talk a little bit about real statistics.
Yep.
A year and a half ago, 2 years ago, we bought most of the projects that we have now in the year of 2021. We bought the dirt. Mm-hmm. You're underwriting those at the time. We're looking at bank construction loans, maybe in the 4s, maybe, on a bad one, maybe 5s, and really realistically thinking we might get 80% LTC on a bank construction loan. What's going on today? Like that, there's been some change there versus what happened at the, when we underwrote some of these deals. And now as we're in construction and breaking ground on these things, what are we looking at for bank rates as we're going through these processes? Now, I know you have a couple that you're super close to signing bank notes on.
Yeah. I mean, you got to be prepared for that shift. And the way that we do our syndications, we're prepared for that adjustment, right? Because we sell so many shares, and we have the ability to kind of liquidate and sell more and kind of create.
I'll go into that, and I know that you're set up and you prepare for that downside risk. But I really am interested in, like, what's the reality of today? Yeah. What you're getting from rates for the bank.
Yeah, the reality of it is, and banks will start out in la la land. I think, a lot of them will try to hit you with 60% loan to cost. I think the one we're closing on right now is 70 loan to cost. A lot of the ways that you can kind of make adjustments on things like that is some of it's like burn off rates, like it'll adjust as you're building. You can start to kind of maneuver different adjustments on the valuations, first of all, but also potentially on the rates, and then like when the refi happens and all that. I mean, there's just so many different variables. But I think that a pretty standard movement now is a lot of folks are going interest only, which changes a lot of things, right? So what that looks like is, if you used to get a bank loan at 5.5, or we never got anything in the 4s. I mean, even back when rates were really low, I mean, we weren't there yet. So I think most of our construction loans back in the day were 5.5. Now we're looking at interest only loans that are prime +1 or something along those lines. So we're still in that like 7.5, 8 range, something like that. Again, it's interest only, right? So it doesn't majorly affect the project. Like, it hurts. It doesn't kill the project, because again, you're talking about $10 million projects, and essentially these projects almost always have 10 to 12% contingency factors baked into them. So you're talking about $1 million contingency on a $10 million build, and so you have some flexibility there on what your interest rates are, where that money's going to come from, how you're going to float it. Really, what the bigger challenge with a lot of banks are today, interest rates is just one part of the equation. What your bigger challenge is stabilization factors, debt service coverage ratios, really just extreme underwriting tactics. Because it's not just the interest that changed. The banks really like shrink up. It's not just the interest. Now all of a sudden it's like, let's look at every other global perspective. If I wanted to have $1 million liquidity, now I need to see 2 million. If the debt service coverage ratio is 1.2, now we want to see 1.3. And it's not just in self-storage or any type of commercial. I was talking to a friend of mine the other day, is one of our investors, and I tend to just call our investors and check in and see what's up. And he was like, man, I'm buying a Class C, again, workforce housing apartment complex. I forget what he said, 50, 60 units. And he's like, I'm buying this thing at like 55% loan to cost. Like, that's my purchase price. I got an appraisal. I think he said his appraisal was I'm making up numbers, but his appraisal was 4 million. And he's paying like 2.2. And he's like, I'm trying to get a loan of, 1.6 or something like that with an appraisal of 4. And the bank doesn't want to give it to me. They wanted a 1.5 debt service coverage ratio. Like, the numbers were just astronomical. He's like, I can't steal this property. I'm trying to buy something and steal it from the seller. And he's like, the bank just keeps pressing back. Like, we'll give you a note for 1.5. And he's like, it's ridiculous. Like, you want to give me a 30% loan on a property that's worth $4 million. But I think that the challenge just becomes right place, right time, right bank. A lot of banks are, they differ depending on what area that differs. And by the way, this isn't like, I don't think I'm giving you like today's advice for those that are listening. This is like in general advice, right? Good market, bad market. You got to kiss a lot of frogs. You got to talk to local banks. You got to talk to regional banks. You got to talk to banks that want to specialize in your product. Because regardless of the market, there are banks that don't want self-storage, and there's banks that are dying for self-storage. There are banks that don't want to look at new construction. There are banks that specialize in new construction. There are banks that don't want to take the risk on development. There are banks that they love development. So really, it's their appetite for the product mixed with today's current rates. That's the combination that you have to figure out. And, frankly, that's why I like to work with brokers who package our deals really well. They're worth the expense of paying them a half point, a point, whatever you might pay them, to get you in front of multiple outlets to find ways to write you.
I think that's interesting. You were talking about earlier about keeping our small team. Mm-hmm. But our small team is not just our small team, right? Yeah. Our small team is supplemented by, obviously, we use Marcus and Millichap and Chris Litzler, who is our broker who puts these out for us. And look, I'm reminded of a story I used to tell when I taught martial arts to little kids, right? Of Colonel Sanders peddling Kentucky Fried Chicken and talked to 1,000 freaking restaurants before anyone agreed to bake his chicken. So maybe now you don't talk to 10 banks to get a deal that works. Maybe you talk to 100.
Oh, and not only that, I mean, to add to that, like I was talking to Chris last week, and this sounds like a lot of numbers, so I'm not saying this to scare people, but like back when things were good, Chris would put my deals in front of 100 banks and we would get 15 responses of interest, right? Now he puts us in front of 200 banks and we get 5 that are interested, right? So it's like people don't understand the volume of what it takes to get a deal done. And again, I'm not saying it to scare people. It's just like, that's the thing about this market. I actually love it. Guys like us love it. All 3 of us are grinders, right? Like we're like, you throw an obstacle in front of me, I will just keep freaking hitting that target until I take it down, right? That's just how I am. Like, so when a market gets tough, I just get tougher. Like we talk about raising capital, we talk about building the fund, we talk about doing more deals. Like, you say to me it can't be done, it's like, all right, cool. I'm going to put that back here in the back of my mind, and I'm going to find ways to make you look stupid, right? I'm going to keep going until you look stupid. That's what I'm going to do. Thank you very much. Like tell me it can't be done a few more times so that I can show you how dumb you look when I do it, right? That's perfect. I appreciate that. That's motivation. That's fire. That's fuel. I'll keep going. So to me, it's like this market, the best part about it is it's the ultimate separating factor. Because there's so many quitters out there, man. Like 95% of the world is full of freaking quitters. And I love that shit because I know I'm going to eat them for lunch. And we're just starting. We're just starting to find the quitter syndrome. We're just starting to weed out the losers. The bums of the world are just starting to surface, guys. They're just starting to find the surface, and they're getting sucked under. They're in the deep end, and they're trying to doggy paddle. And I'm just gonna walk all over their heads when shit starts to get hot and the water starts to get rough.
Murph, we got Joe fired up tonight. I love it.
This is good. And I love Jessica Johnson chiming in too. This is great.
I love it. Like I really do. Like I think it's about to get rough.
100%.
And it's just getting started. Like
it's so
just
interesting.
Getting started.
I was up this weekend at a tournament that Tiger Schulman's, the old martial arts organization I worked with, and obviously COVID happened in 2020 and literally jeopardized every one of those guys' careers. Right? They weren't allowed to open their school. They couldn't teach. They couldn't sign people up. They all did virtual classes. And I had a conversation with a couple of my good friends back then, and I said, "Look, guys, here's the deal. This is going to suck for you. But think about what happens if you make it through COVID when things open up and all of your competitors are out of business." And the reality is today, even though the economy in general, everyone's fearful, those guys are making more money right now than they've ever made in a 35-year history of that organization. Right? Why? Well, because they survived and a bunch of other people didn't. We're kind of at like in commercial real estate, we're at the beginning of COVID relatively, and you're right. Like it's a matter of who survives and who doesn't, right? Who's gonna buck up and do the work that needs to be done.
Absolutely. And I tell you what, I was on I've said this a couple times this week, but I was on a call the other day. You guys know I was on a Clubhouse, which I didn't even know anybody did that shit anymore, but a really well-known guys Clubhouse, and there's like 35 operators on there. And I was on the phone with like a bunch of guys I look up to. I didn't even realize they were on this call, and I was like, damn, this is cool. I'm on this call. And a bunch of them told me on the call that they're starting funds. They've started $25 million fund, $80 million fund, $100 million fund. And I was like, wow, what kind of fund? Like a purchase, buy and hold. They're like, nah, you can't buy and hold shit right now. It's still really hard to find as is deals. We're all developing. And I'm like, damn, this is how I know I'm in the right room, right? Yeah. These guys have all seen the same thing I'm seeing right now. They're seeing people scared. They're running away. They're afraid to buy land. And they're like, now is the time to go out there, get the private equity, get the shovels in the ground, build the shit while everyone's running their own direction. Because guess what? It's a 2 to 3 year cycle to take a piece of dirt and turn it into a Class A site. So when we wake up 3 years from now, we're sitting on 15, 20 new sites. Who's ramping up the fastest? Who's getting the money in the door the fastest? Who's the best site on the block, right? Who's the one who's going to go out there and find those, actually charge the greatest rates and be able to fill that thing up the fastest? Because everyone else is going to be 100% occupied, which is good for them, but they're going to have no new anything on the market. They're going to have no new resource. We're going to be filling up overnight because we'll be the only ones putting new product in the market. There's a handful of us out there.
One of the statistics I talk about a lot is that in 2022, at the beginning of the year when the SSA Almanac came out, there was 6.2 square feet listed as the number of square feet of self-storage per capita in the United States. Yeah. In 2023, despite actually a boom, like we were in a boom mode through, 2021, 22, the number actually went down. Less self-storage came online in 2022 than the population increase accounted for. And so now with people restricting and pulling back on development, which, we're in it every day, we see, a lot of developers not having an appetite to go build new stuff. What's it going to look like 3-4 years from now? And we're at the highest occupancy rates that have ever existed in the industry. So it's, the statistics tell the tale of, hey, this is not a terrible time. I want to go back to something that I brought up, and you touched on a couple things I want to have you kind of illuminate for our audience because some people may not really know. You talked about debt service coverage, and I know this is something when I first started working with Legacy, I had no freaking idea what that meant. Mm-hmm. A lot of people are familiar with residential real estate. A lot of people have taken residential real estate training, and they understand the idea of 70% loan to value, right? Of getting a loan based on the total perceived value of the property. Not everyone understands debt coverage ratio. Could you break that down for me?
Yeah, debt service coverage ratio is, and let me preface this with, I'm not a banker, okay? And I'm not a financial advisor, but debt service, DSCR, is a completely made up bullshit number that bankers make up to cover their ass when they don't underwrite the rest of the deal. They just throw this like their cherry on top, okay?
Right.
So what they want to do is they want to make sure not only do they get their loan to value, not only does the interest rate calculate, not only does the rents calculate, not only does their vacancy rate fit in, not only is the insurance paid, not only are the taxes paid, not only is everyone else paid, and there's still profit on the table, but now we're going to throw some more bullshit on top. Okay. That's what debt service coverage ratio is. It looks like. See, even Siri thinks it's bullshit. Let's say that to do everything to pay all of your bills, and not just take like a single family house to begin with, because they I've been doing this for years with single family houses. Let's say to pay all of your bills, it's $1,000 a month. You have to have $1,000 a month in income. Okay. If you had a debt service coverage of 1.2, which is very, very typical in like residential world, it's actually pretty typical in commercial world. 1.2 is kind of the number. When times are really good, and this is why I call it bullshit. All jokes aside, it is a bullshit number. But the reason I call it bullshit is when times are really good, bankers will just fucking play with this number. They'll go, we'll call it 1.15. Looks good. Hmm. And like times are really good, the board will go, we'll let them get away with it, 1.15. Because everything else makes sense, right? And then times get tough and everyone gets scared and they all pull back in their turtle shell and they go, I'm so afraid to make a deal happen. So everything else makes sense. And they go, we'll just make it 1.3. Well, guess what? It's a big goddamn difference when you're talking about, and what I mean by that is, let's say it's $1,000 a month to pay your bills. You have to be able to bring in $1,200 a month to hit the debt service coverage ratio.
Right.
Again, remember, they're already taking into account a certain percentage of vacancy, a certain percentage of maintenance, a certain percentage of all the other expenses tied into that number already in there. Okay. And that's $1,000 a month to cover all that stuff. They're just arbitrarily throwing some more shit on top. Okay. So that you're covered. Okay. And so now you're hearing these numbers and they're, like I said, arbitrary. You're hearing stuff like 1.4, 1.3, 1.5. Why not just make it 2 times? Why not just make it whatever the hell you want? Because that's what a lot of these banks are doing. And the reality of it is, this is why I'm saying that the rates are one thing, right? When a rate goes from 4% to 8%, that's a lot. It's a big difference in your payment. But when the underwriting becomes other things, that's what really screws up a deal. Right. When the bank decides we're going to get really stringent on all the other things that go into the deal besides the rate. If it was just the rate and everything else stayed the same, chances are a lot of these deals would still pencil and it wouldn't be so hard to find a deal. But the problem is that the bankers are being, they're looking and saying, well, we all of a sudden got to figure out ways to get really, really stringent. And we can't just bank on the rates being high. We have to find other ways to be sensitive. And that's why stuff takes longer. Commitment letters take long. I mean, let's face it, guys, in a really, really hot market, these guys are printing money. They're trying to close in 4 weeks, right? Now in a tough market with tough interest rates and everything's tough and everybody's job is tough, it's like 4 months to close the same exact deal that you took 4 weeks to close.
I think that's so interesting and leads me down another. I love this guy too, Facebook user whose name I can't see because it's not. I don't know why Jessica Johnson always shows up with her name in our feed and nobody else's name shows up. So I don't know what Jessica. Coach Gio showed up too. Joe, want to go to a place here. So obviously there's been some significant changes on. Look, that stops our timeline, right? You're famous for saying time kills all deals. If the bank takes 120 days to get through underwriting and committee and sign the note for us to start construction instead of 30, that's 4 months. You are doing something that almost nobody in the real estate world is doing right now, which is I think we're about $38 million to $40 million we've raised in syndication on our deals right now. Every one of those investors is getting a check every single month. Mike Fallett, who watches a lot of times with us, he goes on every month on his social media. He raises his check.
I don't pay Mike to advertise.
We do not pay Mike to be an advertiser. He doesn't get any money for going on every month. When he gets his check in the mailbox, he waves it in front of his social media. That guy is one of a kind for sure. But you're paying a pref to these people, and look, that's at $40 million. That's $4 million a year of pref payments you're paying to your investors on these deals. Things are taking longer. You're having to come up with bigger. Your LTV maybe has gone from 75-80 to 65-70. So you're having to get more money from investors, not as much money from the bank. And yet you're still able to keep these facilities being built. And your profit in the long term still looks pretty good. Explain to me why that is. What is it about self-storage that allows you, especially you who has all the background in residential and multifamily that you do and really can compare it to another class? Why is it that you're still able to pay a pref to pay? We know a lot of multifamily syndications that stopped paying pref last year. You aren't getting pref if you're in a commercial office space deal or a commercial retail deal. Why is it that in self-storage we're able to still be able to see our investors getting a great return?
Yeah, frankly, just really skinny deals, right? Like I'm not here to like pick on other people's stuff or like shit on other people's deals, but the reality of it is you've seen these type of deals, you can read them all day long where, they're buying a value add deal they're all in at 6 million and their goal is to get it worth 9 million, right? And what's 75% of 9 million? Like they're trying to refi out and scrape 500K off the table. And when you're 6 months or 12 months late on that, all of your upside potential's been wasted and you have no room to go back and dilute or renegotiate, or there's no flexibility there, right? So when I take a similar project, and the numbers are all together, they're a little bit different, right? But let's say I'm into something for 13 million that's worth 20 million, right? And it takes me too long. And, the numbers, the refi didn't happen the way I wanted. And, we screwed some things up and it cost us an extra 500 grand. Like I'm into it for 14 and it's still worth 20. Right. So like there's just more room to make mistakes is kind of a simple way of saying it. It's oversimplifying, but like, the reality of it is at the end of the day, I will probably make slightly less than I anticipate. I will dilute myself. I will bring on maybe a few more investors than I originally anticipated. It might take us a little longer than we expected. It might take us an extra refi or two to get that extra cash that we anticipated on the deals. I'm upfront about this with all of my investors, and they're on board and they understand it. It's the reality of real estate right now. It's a fucking tough thing to do. Like I don't care who you are, everyone's dealing with the same shit. But storage allows us for more of that lateral movement, right? We're in these deals for somewhere around 60 to 65 cents on the dollar, all in. That's hard cost, soft cost, holding cost, investor payments, pref, all of this stuff, right? So when you turn around and put it all together, that's really, really good. You're not up against the gun at 75% loan to cost or loan to value, trying to scrape together a refi and then not having anything left to trade on. That makes sense? So when you're in a $20 million deal, that extra 15% leeway is a lot of money. And so there's some extra, flexibility there that I don't think smaller deals or tighter deals might have. But it's also why I like to develop, because it gives us the flexibility to build exactly what we need for that site, control costs as much as possible, deliver what we can, and deliver it in a fairly quick way. I mean, I can also tell you, and again, I'm not beating up on the apartment guys. I just happen to know a lot of them. We built a 100,000 square foot Class A site in 12 to 13 months. Right. I've seen guys spend 18 to 24 months doing a value add on a 60 unit apartment complex. By the time they get through all the kitchens and bathrooms in a 60 unit building that's occupied, it can take 2 years.
I think that's so interesting. You just brought that up. Two things I want to go down. Number one, Sicklerville, Garden State Storage, which we opened up back in January. It's 130,000 square feet plus, I think, gross.
Yeah, gross. I think net's like 98, but yeah.
There's 2 bathrooms.
There's
two toilets. There's 2 toilets in the whole building. It's 130,000 square feet. I mean, it kind of goes without saying. Going back to my earlier conversation, which was especially in late 21 through 22, there was some significant increase in costs. We weren't hit as much with that in self-storage just because you don't have carpets and you don't have drywall and you don't have toilets and you don't have, as many all those little things that really add up. You don't get look, it wasn't fun to see steel costs go up, but it didn't hit you in every single facet of what you would be doing if you were doing a big apartment complex.
Well, so steel and concrete are our 2 biggest expenses, right? And steel saw a swing of I think the most the steel saw swing was like 30%. But we buy steel in futures. Like our steel guys look at 6 months in advance. So they can actually time and buy when they see the best swing. So I think our worst swing on steel, budgetary wise, was a 10% differential. So if our average steel cost is $2 million on a site and our worst hit was 10%, it was a $200,000 swing. You know, going back to our contingency, we got $1 million contingency, on, like, let's say on average on one of these deals. So, you know, yeah, it hurts on the contingency basis, but it still hits the budget, you know, when everything settles. So if that's our biggest swing on our biggest expense, then, you know, we're still in line to get the deal done on time and in budget.
That was the perfect segue. Next week, guys, if you're watching now, an absolute character joining us. Finally got Wayne Woolsey. I've been working on him literally for a year to come to. I started the show. We started doing the show in October. I've been working on him since the day I started. I finally I don't know how I did it, but I goaded him into signing up to come see us. He's coming on next Wednesday. Wayne is the owner of Kiwi 2 Construction. Kiwi 2 is a general contractor. They do the whole kit and caboodle from soup to nuts. But his real strength is providing steel, right? We have him provide steel on every single site we do. How important is connections like that for you to be able to control those costs?
Hyper important. I mean, as you guys know, Wayne is one of our real strategic partners in the business. He's one of the, you know, easily the top 5 subcontractors that we use. I mean, he's basically doing 90% of our steel erection around the country. Design build company, knows how to control the costs, deploys guys directly to the site, keeps them on site during the whole time of construction. Just consummate professional. And his guys work 7 days a week. I mean, you know, there's so few teams that are capable of doing what his teams do. Can't say enough about the guy. Can't say enough about his crews. But yeah, I mean, there's just it's amazing to have teams like him on staff. And you know, the fact is that that's one of the benefits of not just being in the mastermind and working with our teams and having, you know, our chief development officer and our connections is, you know, being able to get a guy like Wayne on the cell phone. Like Wayne is, you guys know, is busy, right? Like the fact you got him on an interview, it's unheard of. It's unheard of.
It's pretty now. It's interesting. We have a family that was at our event in New Orleans who are in Alaska, and they're doing a small staged build, and they're able to connect with Wayne Woolsey because they're in the Storage Syndicate Mastermind. So I was going to kind of go down that road with you because you had Kiwi on your very first build. How the heck did you pull that off? You're brand new in self-storage, and all of a sudden you got Wayne Woolsey, who I think right now he's in the 900s and as far as self-storage development sites he's done, you know, ground up, at least as the steel provider, if not doing a deeper, you know, GC or design from the jump roll. How do you get that guy on your first project?
Yeah, I'm hoping to cross 1,000 with him too. Yeah, you know, I think, you know, really one of my unique abilities, as you guys know, is really team building. It's finding the right people. And, you know, we wouldn't be building or scaling as fast as we are right now if it wasn't for locating great people. And, you know, not only the team that we have in the office, which I think we have amazing staff, and most of them, let's face it, almost none of us had self-storage experience when we started. So, you know, a lot of it really has to do with aptitude, attitude, ability, you know, going out there and just learning and you know, solving problems and crushing goals. And then on the outside, I really look at the consultants and the subs and the contractors, the people we work with as, you know, what real experience and connections can they bring? You know, I'm looking for really, really good partners. And I did a post earlier on LinkedIn too. It was like, you know, if you have the wherewithal to, you know, if you have some experience in development and you can raise capital and you're willing to go out there and commit yourself to building a deal, you know, come to us. If you want to build a Class A facility, like raise your hand, DM me, right? Let's talk about it. It's amazing to me, the magic of social media and connectivity today, right? I posted that thing like 2 hours ago. I'm literally looking at my inbox, like LinkedIn's blowing up. I got 10 people messaging me in the last hour.
Crazy,
I'm not even connected to. I don't even know how LinkedIn works.
Yeah.
Like people follow you guys or something. I don't even know.
The most
They're not even
vastly underutilized social media site. I routinely put posts on Facebook and Instagram that get 100 to 200 people look at them.
It's wild.
I put stuff on LinkedIn. I get 1,500 to 2,000. It's unbelievable.
It's wild. It's wild, right? But like that to me, like that's the power of abundance mindset. That's the power of thinking big. That's the power of really wanting other people to succeed. Because when I say that, as you guys know, like, yeah, we'll make money joint venturing with those people. But really what I want is to help other people get into this industry, create connectivity, because I know those people are going to bring other investors. Those people are going to bring other subs that we've never heard of. They're going to bring other people that will add value to our team. They'll bring other people. Hell, they might bring people we hire. They might become people that we hire. They might become people that come to work for us. You know, like, I don't know. All I know is the more we put this out there, the more our team grows. Right. So, you know, for me, it's like, yes, joint venture partners are awesome. Some of them are going to do a deal and never talk to us again. Some of them are going to do 20 deals with us. And like, all I know is the more that we put that out there in the world, the better our team grows, the more we grow and, you know, we create.
I love that. I'm gonna go down this road a little bit because I absolutely love your mindset on this. And I know that you have spent a massive amount of money personally. You weren't just born with that mindset, right? This isn't something that Joe Evangelisti at 10 years old understood abundance and understood the value of connections. And you say it's a gift that you have, but it's something you spent a lot of time nurturing. We had our very first JV partner, still our JV partner. We're JV'd with him on 2 deals. Brightworks, Brady McDonald, who's doing what we do now. He decided I'm going to build my own team and I'm going to go out and find my own sites. Congratulations to him. One of his team members, Roy McDonald, not Roy McDonald. I don't know why I can't said Roy McDonald. It's a former UFC fighter, Roy De Silva, who I used to work with in another business. They just sold a development site off. You're not pissed off about that. Like, that doesn't bother you that they're doing exactly what we're doing. Quite the opposite. We call them up and say, hey, congratulations, man. This is fantastic. You took the model that we did and you copied it and you're profiting from it. That doesn't hurt us. Quite the opposite, right? It helps us. It's putting out that, hey, we know what the hell we're doing and we know it so well that we can teach somebody else how to do it and be successful.
Yeah, no, I mean, listen, again, it's abundance, right? Like, I'm already talking to the guy that bought the site from him about joint venturing on more sites. Yeah. You know, like here's the thing. Everybody has a unique ability, right? Like, I can't build 100 self-storage facilities by myself, right? I can't go do shovel-ready storage by myself. I can't run Storage Syndicate by myself. Like, I can't do any of this stuff by myself. I can't go raise $40 million for the first round. I can't go raise the next 50 for the fund. Like, I know that no man is an island, right? And so getting back to your point, right? Like, how did I figure this out? I was a freaking island for like 7 years. And back in my like late 20s, early 30s, I damn near had a stroke. Like, I just did it all because I was that egotistical jerk off who ran around and told everybody, if I want to get it done right, I got to do it myself. Like, we've all met that asshole. Like, you probably know 10 people like him. And those are my favorite people to coach, right? Because they're so right about everything, you know, that they're just going to keep doing it. And guess what? Eventually, you're going to die standing up. You're probably going to grab your chest and you're going to kiss the freaking dirt, and that'll be the end of you. Right? You're never, you just can't. You just can't. Right? And you can tell yourself that story, and you can pretend that you're the best at everything, and you can jump in and fix things all the damn time. But what you end up having, and what I ended up having 5 years ago, and again, I always have to preface this because I had really good people, but I had a terrible culture, right? Because I was a terrible leader because I just jumped in and fixed shit all the time because I was the man. I knew everything and nobody else knew anything. And, you know, everyone was an asshole. And I you know, like, that's terrible leadership. Right. So the way that I learned to create a great team of people that I love working with is I learned how to be a good leader. I started looking in the mirror. I started working on myself. I started, you know, trying to create good mentorship tactics and good coaching tactics. And like, am I perfect? Hell no. Right. Like, I mean, we went on a walk this morning, Thad, and you told me I was an asshole. Like, I'm okay with that. I get it. Like I'm not perfect.
I didn't say it quite that bluntly. Maybe
I
I
try to be a good leader. I'm not perfect. Sometimes I'm an asshole. Like I'm not perfect. I can tell you right now, I was a way bigger asshole 5 years ago. Like I didn't hold back nothing 5 years ago. I would tell you your face that you were an asshole. I'd fire you in front of 10 people 5 years ago. Like I did a lot worse shit 5 years ago. Trust me. So like I've learned to evolve. I think a lot of it's maturity too. I think I've calmed down quite a bit in the last 5 or 10 years. Like I think a lot of that happens just from a lot of it's practice, right? But you know, I did this video last night on vulnerability too. Like I think it's very important that we all recognize that we're vulnerable. Like we're learning, we're growing, we're working on ourselves, and we should be. And I think the biggest thing that we could all take away is like not being afraid to admit that we're growing, not being afraid to admit that we're learning. Like so, like you know, yeah, we've done 8 deals, and they're still under construction, by the way. Like not all of them have even broken ground yet because we're waiting on permits and we're waiting on debt and we're waiting on these things. So like we're in the process. We're still growing and we're going to continue to grow. And by the way, when we're 25 deals deep, we'll still be growing, right? Like we're going to consistently evolve. So the biggest challenge I think for a lot of folks is recognizing that growth and admitting that you're going to consistently be growing. And every person on this call, every person watching us, every person watching the replay, whether you want to admit it or not, you're growing. You know, you're not the best at probably very many things, let alone everything. You know, there's going to be someone out there that's better than you. And the more you can let your guard down and admit that, it's amazing who you can attract. It's amazing when you start to tell people like, dude, I'm not good at that. You start to attract the people that are really good at it, right? That are like, oh shit, this guy who I'm looking up to, who I want to emulate, who's the man, whatever you are, the man at. By the way, here's another fun fact. Everyone looks at you as the man in something. Probably, right? They're all looking up at you for some reason. Like Steven is a badass boxer, right? Thad, well, used to be a badass boxer, but people look at Thad as the shovel-ready storage guy, right? Like, guys, somebody's looking up at you for some reason. Everyone looks up at us for a reason, and they look at you as an expert for something, right? For sure. But when they're looking at you, it's not hard to like be vulnerable and say like, you know what, I don't know this thing, right? And that actually attracts, that builds rapport, that helps people want to connect with you.
I think that's interesting. When I first started Shovel Ready Storage and we were working on, you and I, on the marketing plan, one of the most common phrases I would say is, hey, I'm brand new to this storage game. You know, I really look forward to you helping me understand what's going on in this asset class.
Such a good builder.
And I have so many friends that have been in self-storage. Sean Kruk, who's one of the guys responsible for getting you in this, just reached out to me the other day. I talked to Sean 2 years ago and said, hey, I don't know my ass from my elbow in this space. What do I need to know? And he reached out to me the other day, said, hey, we need to get together here soon. I want to see how we can help each other. And, you know, that vulnerability and that willingness to say, hey, no, I don't know. You know,
and not only that, he's a freaking stud. And we talked for 2 hours on our first phone call. And he told me on our first phone call, I'm only 4 deals deep, dude. I don't really know what the fuck I'm doing. Like that was his thing. And like at that point, he had made millions. And he still was like, man, I'm still trying to figure this shit out.
Oh, that's freaking great. Like, Joe, I could listen to you all friggin' night. It's 7:48, and I try and honor the 45 minutes that we plan on this call going. Sometimes we go a little over. You know, this is pretty simple. We know we got another 45 minutes we could chat. We'll just schedule another one of these pretty soon. But as always, man, love the enthusiasm, love the obvious passion you have for what it is we do. One of the reasons that I love working with this company, if you guys are watching, I see people commenting, you just feel it. And Joe's like this 100% of the time. As I probably told him on his walk this morning, sometimes it comes off in a way that can be a little bit, hard to take sometimes, but he tells you the truth. What I admire and what I want to close with is this is a guy that is putting his money where his mouth is. When he tells you, hey, go dial the phone 50 times, it's because he's fucking dialing the phone 50 times himself. When he says, hey, you need to go get a coach, it's because he's paying massive amounts of money every year to have a coach. When he says, hey, you need to go to mastermind events, it's because he's paying to go to mastermind events. So you guys want to follow someone and be a part of somebody who is doing what it is they say to do. This is a guy who's definitely living that life. And look, any of you guys watching are interested in getting more involved in storage, check out storagesyndicate.com. Come and see what we're all about. Would love to inform you even more. As I said, next Wednesday night, 7 p.m. Really excited. We've had Wayne at a couple of our live events. He's a phenomenal dude, really cool sense of humor, a New Zealander, which is thus the name Kiwi, got the cool accent to go with it. So stoked to pick his brain and really get some insight into what's going on the construction side of things right now. Look forward to you guys joining us then. And as always, man, appreciate you for tuning in to the Storage Syndicate Spotlight.
Thanks, guys. Great call.
Awesome. Thank you, Joe.